Hello and welcome to our morning edition of Arirang News. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour. Following the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling against reciprocal tariffs, the Trump administration is working to restore tariff pressure, saying trading partners want to keep trade deals in place. Meanwhile, officials from South Korea's ruling Democratic Party, the government, and the Blue House agreed to swiftly pass a special bill on investment in the United States. President Lee Jae-myung is set to host the Brazilian president at the Blue House today for summit talks. They're expected to discuss ways to boost cooperation in areas including trade, energy, and technology. This year's Winter Olympics have wrapped up, and South Korea met its target, winning 3 golds, 4 silvers, and 3 bronzes, to finish 13th overall. We begin this morning in the United States, where the White House is moving swiftly to restore tariff pressure after a Supreme Court ruling last week dealt a blow to President Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
The United States says its trading partners want to keep existing trade agreements in place, even after the Supreme Court struck down President Donald Trump's reciprocal tariffs. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told CNN on Sunday that Washington's counterparts want to maintain previously concluded trade deals. He stressed that the court ruling only blocked tariffs imposed under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, adding that the president still has other authorities. Trump has already moved to use them. On Friday, he triggered a never-before-used Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act, imposing a 10% global tariff. One day later, he said the rate would rise to 15%, the maximum allowed under the law. He also said new legally permissible tariffs would be announced within months. Section 122 allows tariffs of up to 15% for 150 days to address balance of payment concerns. Any extension requires congressional approval. Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, meanwhile, allows tariffs on national security grounds and has previously been used on steel and automobiles. The administration is also eyeing Section 301 of the Trade Act, which introduces tariffs after investigations into unfair or discriminatory trade practices. In tow, the ruling Democratic Party, the government, and the Office of the President held a closed-door meeting. According to Democratic Party floor spokesperson Moon Kum-ju, participants agreed that the swift passage of the Special Act on Investment in the United States is in the national interest. They pledged to process the bill by March 9th, as agreed by both ruling and opposition parties. Officials also shared concerns that Washington could invoke Section 301 and other trade measures and agreed to refrain from hasty countermeasures.
I would say governments around the region will try to stay competitive in the U.S. market, avoid becoming the targets of the latest rounds of tariff, and position themselves as alternative manufacturing bases when supply chains shift. So you might see some quiet adjustments, incentives to attract relocated factories, closer monitoring of transshipment, and also more trade diplomacy, but not open bargaining power plays, because that is frankly not how Asian countries work, right?
Meanwhile, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer signaled that enforcement will intensify. He told media that investigations have been launched into Brazil and China under Section 301. He added that Washington will probe excess production capacity in several Asian countries, saying some produce more than they consume and distort global markets. Greer also said that the Supreme Court ruling would not affect the upcoming US-China summit, scheduled for late March or early April. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
And now for a closer look at how the U.S. Supreme Court's ruling on the Trump administration's tariffs can have on South Korea. We're joined today by Professor Oh Jun-seok, Dean at the College of Economic and Business at Sookmyung Women's University. Professor Oh, thanks for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled against most of the global tariffs the White House announced last year, and analysts say this has further raised uncertainties. What's your take on this? How might this affect South Korea?
The court's decision is a good news for sure. Yes, Trump administration has absolute power. No doubt is the U.S. Constitution grants Congress, not the president, the authority to issue tax and tariffs. What a relief is the U.S. system has not lost its control entirely, so that I could expect that what will come based on common knowledge of the separation of power, checks and balances, and the rule of law. What a grief is the court's ruling will not restore the United States to its former place as a reasonable, trustworthy leader in the world. Though the court's ruling will protect the international economic architecture, the rule-based architecture remains fractured. Legal rigidity needs more than flexibility in time of fractured architecture. The court, however, did not limit the president's ability to justify government action. This court's decision might add more to economic uncertainty as deals Trump struck with other countries are upended by the decision. Moreover, within a short time, he needs another source of revenue to fill the budget hole created by the foregone custom to do this. It is estimated that the levy collected so far amount to about 120 billion US dollar, or 0.5% of US GDP. It is unclear whether the Supreme Court's decision will make that process any easier. Section 122 requires congressional approval to extend the tariff beyond 150 days and must not discriminate among countries. Trump could restore to Section 301 of the 1974 Trade Act, which permits tariff to retaliate against unfair trade practices. He could invoke Section 232 of the 1962 Trade Expansion Act, which he used to put levies on steel, aluminum, lumber, semiconductor, and others on national security ground. Many countries around the world must now negotiate same new trade deals, but these also come with the risk of reigniting the same constitutional debate.
I see. And President Trump also said he will raise the global tariff rate from 10% to 15% following that ruling. How might this affect Korean businesses?
There's an estimation the Supreme Court's call will reduce the United States average trade-weighted tariff to 8.3% from 15.3%, which will come as very good news for Korean businesses. Though 8.3% is an extraordinarily high tariff compared to the Korea-US FTA, almost 0% by recent historical standard, the Supreme Court's action may have temporarily halted even higher previously planned 25% tariff, providing a brief reprieve. Despite the U.S. Supreme Court's decision, Seoul will largely maintain trade and investment conditions. What is worried more is many business groups express concerns of business volatility. The decision will lead to extra months of additional uncertainty as the administration pursues new tariffs through other legal authorities. Trump's proposed increase of a global tariff rate to 15% under Section 122 of the Trade Act creates significant long-term uncertainty for Korean businesses. Key impact include higher costs for major exports like automobiles or semiconductors. In case of automobiles, a major export faces potential profit reduction of up to 23%, while steel and aluminum remains under existing high tariff regime. The 150-day limit on Section 122 tariff means further more tailored tariffs such as Section 301 could follow, targeting specific industries like semiconductor and pharmaceuticals. The 15% rate coupled with existing $350 billion US dollar investment commitment may face renegotiation, complicating business strategies. Many Korean products were already operating under tariff ceiling close to 15% due to existing deals. The court did not say how the government should refund the illegal tariff worth an estimated $175 billion US dollars. When asked about a refund, Trump himself said, "We will end up being in the court for the next 5 years."
Right, and some say it'll be difficult for the Korean government to renegotiate that $350 billion deal with the United States. And the government did say the trade conditions, including, the investment plans, will stay in place despite the Supreme Court ruling. How do you think the Korean government should respond given the Korean tariff uncertainties, and how might tariff negotiations play out from now on?
More than anything else, that Investors in the capital market also has the hope for easing inflation against uncertainty about Trump's next move on tariff. Based on the current highly volatile situation, the $350 billion investment deal is facing a severe bottleneck. The situation is characterized by the cash upfront demand from the United States, and a subsequent U.S. Supreme Court ruling will lead to a complex multi-front trade crisis. It is very crucial for Seoul to analyze exactly which products are affected by the nullified reciprocal tariff and which fall on the separate trade actions. What is more crucial is Seoul has to keep its stance as a consolidated and trusted partner, keeping promises in any way. The financial burden of $350 billion deal is very enormous, nearly 72% of Korea's budget. Seoul should leverage the U.S. reliance on Korean technology such as semiconductors, shipbuilding, EV batteries to secure more favorable terms, such as a spreading investment over a longer period of securing tax breaks rather than cash upfront. Semiconductors are key areas of concern. The Trump administration has floated tariff up to 100% on chips. Tariff on Korea's automotive, steel and battery sectors remain unchanged, as these industries are subject to Section 232 duties tied to national security concerns. Auto tariffs are under renegotiation, with discussion focused on reducing the rate to 15% from a potential 25%, while steel tariffs remain 50%. Tariffs are burdensome, but uncertainty is more difficult for companies because it increases planning costs and complicating investment decisions. The Korean government is unlikely to abandon the deal because of the strategic security aspect, including nuclear power, submarine, and defense technology.
Right, and you mentioned sector-specific tariffs on industries like steel and automobiles. And they remain in place untouched by the Supreme Court's ruling. And there are concerns that the United States could impose higher tariffs on other industries other than steel and automobiles. How should Korean companies prepare themselves? With
the U.S. signaling a return to higher 25% tariff on Korean goods, including automobiles, biopharmacy, and potential 100% tariff on semiconductors, if local investment is not deemed sufficient, Korean companies are bracing for a challenging trade environment. To prepare for this, companies are focusing on three conditions: localization, diversification, and active government support. But first, localization in the U.S. To avoid high tariff, major manufacturers are accelerating the establishment of production base within North America. Automakers like Hyundai Motors, Kia are increasing local production to maintain flexibility, and battery manufacturers are already leveraging their existing U.S. plant. Pharmaceuticals and biotech companies like Samsung Biologics and Celltrion are activating contingency plan, focusing on increasing localizing through acquisition and partnership. Second, diversification. Diversifying market and supply chain. Companies are exploring market beyond the U.S. to reduce dependency, with particular focus on strengthening economic ties with Southeast Asia, India, and Middle East. Given the volatility, firms also try to diversify supply chain to avoid disruptions and are preparing the contingency plan to mitigate the impact of potential 25 tariffs. Lastly, seeking government support. Korean government and companies are invoking no less favorable treatment clause, which was part of U.S.-Korea joint fact sheet. This is to ensure that Korea receives a similar exemption and terms to those negotiated by Taiwan. Companies are analyzing legality of a potential tariff increase and reviewing the possibility of many cases.
I see. I guess we'll have to see how that goes. All right, Professor Oh, thank you so much for your time and insight this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
President Lee Jae-myung will host Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva at the Blue House for summit talks on Monday. According to Lee's office, the two leaders will discuss ways to strengthen cooperation across a wide range of sectors, including trade, energy, and technology. Their talks will be followed by the signing of memorandums of understanding, a joint press briefing, and a state dinner. Lula is on a 3-day state visit to South Korea that began Sunday. President Lee and Lula last met on the sidelines of the G7 summit in Canada last June. Meanwhile, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been re-elected as General Secretary of the ruling Workers' Party, reaffirming his position as the regime's top political leader. The North State media Korean Central News Agency reported on Monday that the decision was adopted on the 4th day of the 9th Party Congress, with delegates fully supporting a proposal to re-elect Kim to the highest post. Under party rules, the General Secretary is elected at a Congress held every 5 years. A resolution credited Kim with strengthening the country's nuclear-based war deterrence and building armed forces prepared for any form of conflict. Party officials declared that sanctions and external pressure no longer work against North Korea. The United States and Iran are set to hold another round of nuclear talks on Thursday in Geneva. The upcoming meeting was confirmed by Oman's Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi on Sunday. The talks come as Tehran faces renewed domestic protests and the threat of a possible U.S. military strike. The Trump administration has expanded its military presence in the Middle East while pressing Iran for concessions on its nuclear program. Iran's top diplomat Abbas Araghchi told CBS he expects to meet U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff in Geneva, adding that there remains a good chance of a diplomatic solution. And as we have been reporting, physical AI has excited people with new cool tech and improvements in working conditions, while some are concerned about their jobs being replaced. Can politicians find the answer to make the most of this technology while protecting its people and their livelihoods? Our Kim Do-yeon spoke to lawmakers addressing the issue.
As the prospect of robots replacing human labor becomes reality with physical AI's recent rapid advancement, the political world has begun debating the subject. President Lee Jae-myung referenced the Luddites in 19th century to suggest you can't stand in the way of progress.
그 기계 파괴 운동이라고 사람들이 일자리를 뺀다고 기계 부수자 이런 운동이 있었잖아요. 근데 그 흘러오는 거대한 수레를 피할 수 없습니다. 결국 그 사회에 빨리 적응해야죠. 기술을 익히고 그걸 증기기관 기계를 통제하는, 조정하는 또는 만들어내는, 수리하는 이런 기능이 또 필요하잖아요.
Consulting firm McKinsey forecasts that by 2030, 800 million jobs will be gone due to AI, and South Korea is at the heart of it, with the highest robot density in the world last year. And for a lawmaker who represents Ulsan, often known as the industrial capital of South Korea, where heavy industries and auto plants make up the city's economy, the reality is coming fast.
If we simply resist this change, the outcome is clear. Companies will move overseas, jobs will vanish, and the very foundation of Korean manufacturing will collapse, dragging the entire economy down with it.
Meanwhile, lawmaker Choi Eun-seok has proposed a soft landing bill to complement South Korea's existing AI Basic Act.
We must prioritize education and retraining. By helping our workers adapt to new, complex roles in this evolving landscape, we can ensure no one is left behind in the transition.
While at early stages of talks, lawmakers are also looking at ways to make sure everybody directly benefits from physical AI and ease the concerns over job losses.
Instead of corporate ownership, imagine a citizen-funded model where profits from robot labor are redistributed back to the people. In the long run, implementing a robot tax or automation tax will be an inevitable necessity.
Most importantly, both lawmakers call for a unified national dialogue. They see this not just as a challenge, but as an opportunity for South Korea to lead the world in balancing innovation with labor.
As the AI era arrives, we must proactively address how it will reshape our labor and daily lives. Now is the time to pool our wisdom to ensure that human value isn't lost in the age of machines.
Now, with the transition to AI seemingly inevitable, the world is watching to see if business, labor, and both sides of the aisle can come together to set a new global standard for the future. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
The 2026 Milano-Cortina Winter Olympics have come to an end, with South Korea finishing 13th overall and meeting its 3 gold medal target, powered by short track success. Short track gold medalist Kim Gi-lee was named the Korean team's MVP. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
South Korea has achieved its goal at the Milan-Cortina Winter Olympics, securing 3 gold medals thanks to a strong lead push from its short track speed skating team. The country also finished the games with 4 silvers and 3 bronzes. That meets the target set by the Korean Sport and Olympic Committee, which had aimed to win at least 1 more gold than at the 2022 Beijing Winter Games, where South Korea collected 2 golds, 5 silvers, and 2 bronzes. The decisive 3rd gold came Friday night when short track skater Kim Gi-lee captured the women's 1,500-meter title, edging out teammate Choi Min-jung. Earlier that day, the men's 5,000-meter relay team added a silver medal to the tally. Once again, short track skaters carried the medal campaign. They accounted for 2 golds, 3 silvers, and 2 bronzes, proof of the sport being South Korea's most reliable Winter Olympic discipline. Kim Gi-lee stood out as the only South Korean athlete to win multiple gold medals in Milan-Cortina. On Sunday, she was named the most valuable player of the South Korean delegation.
There were many truly difficult moments, but thanks to everyone who supported me, I was able to endure them, and I will continue to grow into an even better athlete in the future.
The Korean Sport and Olympic Committee said she was voted MVP by South Korean journalists covering the games. The committee has presented the award to top-performing athletes at major multi-sport events since the 2023 Hangzhou Asian Games. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Good morning, I'm Chu Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. U.S. Secret Service agents shot and killed an armed man after he breached the secured perimeter of President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort. Authorities say the incident happened at about 1:30 a.m. Sunday when a man drove through the resort's north gate as another vehicle was exiting. He was reportedly carrying a shotgun and a gas can. When Secret Service agents and a Palm Beach County sheriff ordered him to drop the items, he raised the shotgun into a firing position and was then shot dead. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump were at the White House in Washington at the time. Investigators have identified the intruder as 21-year-old Austin Tucker Martin from North Carolina and says his family had reported him missing days earlier and believe he traveled south before obtaining the weapon. A box for the shotgun was later found inside his vehicle. The FBI is leading the investigation and says it is compiling a psychological profile, and officials say they have not determined a motive. A Mexican military operation has killed cartel leader Nemesio Oseguera, known as El Mencho, marking one of the most significant cartel takedowns in years. Mexico's defense ministry says troops engaged Oseguera in a shootout in Jalisco state on Sunday, critically wounded him, and he died during an air transfer to Mexico City. Oseguera led the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, a powerful organization that expanded into an international trafficking network and moved cocaine and fentanyl into the United States. The operation triggered immediate retaliation. Gunmen torched vehicles and blocked highways across at least 6 states. Jalisco Governor Pablo Lemus Navarro urged residents to remain indoors. The U.S. Embassy advised American citizens to shelter in place, and major airlines canceled flights to the region. Greenland Prime Minister Jens Frederik Nielsen on Sunday rejected President Donald Trump's proposal to send a U.S. hospital ship to the Arctic territory. Trump had posted on Truth Social that, quote, many people in Greenland are sick and that a boat with medical supplies would be dispatched to take care of them. Nielsen said Greenland provides free public health care to its citizens and does not need outside medical assistance. He urged Washington to engage through dialogue rather than social media announcements. Pope Leo issued a plea for an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine during his Angelus address on Sunday, marking the 4th anniversary of the Russian invasion. Speaking to thousands in St. Peter's Square, the pontiff declared that, quote, peace cannot be postponed, and demanded an end to the shattering of lives and families. With casualty figures now exceeding 1.8 million across both sides since 2022, the Pope urged global leaders to translate dialogue into responsible decisions to end the destruction.
Dry weather advisories are in place for the capital area and most of the eastern parts of Korea. In particular, wildfire alert levels have been raised to caution in parts of Gyeongsang-do province, where a large wildfire has broken out. With dry air and powerful winds combined, extreme caution is required to prevent further fires. Meanwhile, air quality will stay bad due to yellow dust. Central region's Jeollado province and Jeju Island will be trapped in dusty air all day, with concentrations spiking into the very bad level at times. And after a spring-like Saturday, there has been a big drop in temperatures. Seoul will be getting up to 5 degrees. Daegu tops out at 12 degrees Celsius under mostly sunny skies. Then we are looking at a mix of rain and snow nationwide tomorrow, which may help ease the dry conditions. Meanwhile, temperatures will rise to the mid-teens starting Wednesday.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Stay tuned.